Good morning. My name is Megan Handley, and I am here to share the curated narrative of my journey through SCAD's graphic design and visual experience program. This is Design is My Discomfort, a presentation in submission for my MFA Candidacy review. TED founder Richard Saul Wurman once wrote, "When you approach a problem, you must go backward to find the beginning before going forward to find the solution. Only then can you ask yourself the questions that will lead to productive solutions." So let's go back to the beginning of my story to understand why design is my discomfort. I bet you didn't think that my story at SCAD started 15 years ago, did you? Well, it did. I was first accepted into SCAD's graphic design program in the spring of 2007. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I threw myself into the program and fully expected to graduate on time. But that never happened. In the fall of 2008, I completed my teaching assistantship at Endicott College. I'd always wanted to teach, I just never knew what I'd teach or to whom. This first exposure to teaching was everything I wanted out of a job. I was hooked and continued to teach as an adjunct while going to school full-time. Teaching laid the groundwork for my creative passion and lifelong learning. Teaching wasn't just a job. I mean, yes, it was something I was good at, but it was also something that gave me joy in so many unfathomable ways. As you are all educators, I know you understand this unexplainable feeling all too well. I was hired as an assistant professor of graphic design at Newbury College in 2010. Just a few credits shy of completing my MFA, I made a decision that would haunt me for many years to come. I didn't finish my program. I was young and stupid and figured I'm getting my degree to teach, and I already have that job, so why get the degree? Oh, how I wish I could go back in time and slap 20-something me in the face. My department at Newbury College was small, just my chair and I, and the school was small too. We only had about 40 students in the program. I did everything in my power to raise the caliber of the program, from starting the on-campus Graphic Design Association to creating interactive admissions open houses, to creating faculty senate secretary. I wasn't just my students' teacher. I was also the confidant and support. Going out of my way for my students helped make me the person I am today. After 6 years, I left Newbury College because I developed supraorbital neuralgia, a rare neurological disorder characterized by chronic lightning pain, seizures, partial limb paralysis, and slurred speech. My eye throbbed when in the light, so I grew accustomed to wearing sunglasses 24/7. I even wore my sunglasses at night, pun intended. It was one of the hardest decisions I had to make at the time, and this was the first significant discomfort in my life that I had to overcome. But despite this near constant pain, I went to teach at Mount Ida College as an adjunct. I just couldn't give up teaching entirely. In 2012, my program director and I created a new degree program called Interactive Media and Web Development. I wrote the course descriptions and syllabi for all 15 newly created classes. I also taught in that program and the graphic design program as well. But in the fall of 2015, I realized that I just couldn't carry the weight of my pain any longer. It had been over 2 years of near daily pain, and I was truly struggling. Despite being prescribed over 40 different medications, I was still in tremendous pain every day. So I found a surgeon who was performing experimental surgeries on people like me. It worked, and for the next 5 years, I lived without any pain. In the summer of 2017, after an extremely difficult pregnancy, I gave birth to my daughter, Samantha Claire. I had to undergo an emergency C-section, and she and I both almost died in childbirth. When she was born, she wasn't breathing because she had a hole in her lung. I never thought I'd use my Photoshop skills to hide away the wires that were helping my baby to breathe in her first photo. But here we were. The term mom guilt is a legitimate thing, something that lit the fuse for the postpartum trauma that I endured for the first 18 months of my daughter's life. I will never get that time back with her, but I have tried to make every day since be a memorable one. That is why in 2020 I stopped teaching. Well, I put it on pause, we'll say. It was at the beginning of the pandemic that I decided it was time to finish my MFA, so I re-enrolled in SCAD for the winter 2020 quarter. But life had other plans for me. My daughter suddenly went blind in one eye. One day, she almost walked out into oncoming traffic, unable to see what was right in front of her. Terrified and anxious, my husband and I sought the best care possible for her at Boston Children's Hospital, only a 30-minute drive from our home. We learned that we were both carriers of a recessive gene that caused Samantha to develop bilateral cataracts. She came out of surgery a tiny but fierce champ. Looking back, I'm shocked that the final project during my first quarter back at SCAD came out as well as it did. I mean, not for nothing, but not only did my daughter undergo serious surgery during a pandemic, but I had to self-isolate for 2 weeks with COVID, and I got T-boned in a car accident. Talk about more discomfort that I simply endured through in my life. My professor gave me the following final critique. Talk about above and beyond. Wow. How in the world do you find the time to do so much with your plate so full? Quite impressive. The theme carries well through. The message is clear. My favorite stuff, the quotes, the logo, the website, all of it. I really want to submit this to the department as an example of great work from this class. It made a world of difference to have found support from my professor during this difficult time. This project pushed me aesthetically. I learned how to design, dare I say it, off the grid, and I learned how to refine my craft. I also learned humility in transforming from a teacher to a student, and most of all, I learned that my process is everything. As I now say, the work is nothing without the process, and the process is nothing without the work. These two go hand in hand. If you've had a chance to peek at my process books, you'll see just how in-depth my design strategies, refinement, and sketches go. I leave no stone unturned. Have I mentioned yet that I used to be a writer? Well, I was. In fact, I started writing poetry when I was just 7 years old, and I majored in journalism and English literature in college. However, I developed a crazy writer's block after college that lingered for quite some time. That is, until the fall 2021 quarter at SCAD. But first, some more discomforts in my life. My daughter went blind in her other eye. We knew it was coming, so at least we could anticipate it. But that didn't make it any easier. She was a champ, though. She has no idea how much her strength has inspired me. One day when she's older, I will tell her. Then in the fall of 2021, I had to undergo 2 separate surgeries. The first was to remove a 1-inch kidney stone. The second was an emergency procedure to remove my gallbladder. This was rough, but I looked to my daughter and what she'd already had to overcome in her but 4 years on this earth, and I knew that I could face anything. Professor Howery was the first teacher of mine to really push me into areas that are uncomfortable. He wanted me to look within myself and use my life story in my pieces. This was very uncomfortable and difficult for me to do. I was not someone who personalized their work. As hindsight is 20/20, he was right. The inspiration for this packaging design comes from my lifelong struggle with depression. I created this satirical piece based off of all the lies and mistruths that exist about depression and what antidepressants can do. I created a bottle of happy pills, as if you can pop a magical pill in your mouth and bam, your depression has disappeared. I named my product Hot Mess, and the fox is my mascot because foxes are cunning, just as pharmaceutical companies can be. The copy that I wrote for this project was just the starting point of what was to come next. In the spring of 2021, I took a deep dive into my experiences for a project called 5. 5 is an anthology of 5 stories I wrote in 2015, the month prior to my experimental brain surgery. These are stories about growing up in New Jersey and my life in college, touch points that I had never brought into my design work. As I wrote in my letter from the author, while there's a whole lifetime's worth of stories left to tell, it's also a good place to stop and feel the parts of myself and my work that have stretched and changed. This year has been incredibly difficult, and I'm changed by it. I hope you'll go forward into the world to live and record your own stories, and that you find fearlessness, adventure, and humor in every day. It was so important for me to revisit my writing, I'd forgotten how much joy it used to bring into my life. This project helped refuel that. In my favorite story, So Sweet and So Cold, I wrote about my undying love for poetry. I even recorded myself reading this story to put on the compendium website for this project.
I lived on the cracked and faded green line, which moves skittishly above ground like an old house cat. To get home, we crept from stop to stop, as though each were a new shallow dish of milk, lapping up passengers here and there with a rough tongue and indifferent attitude.
After overcoming a serious bout of postpartum trauma, 2 surgeries, and my daughter's illnesses, I started to feel like things were getting better for me. But last summer, while my husband and I were out on our 5-year wedding anniversary, we were involved in a major collision. The feeling of an airbag deploying against your face is something I will never forget. I was so close to getting back myself on track with my health, and then this had to happen. That's why, in my narrative project, I took an in-depth look at what beauty means to me. I created a self-photography series of photos of my scars, outlined in gold hearts. These include the scar from my experimental procedure, my C-section scar, and the scars from my gallbladder removal. These scars are beautiful because they are reminders of what I've overcome to get to where I am today. I continued my journey of self-reflection and self-discovery when creating a digital watercolor of my grandfather and I at our beach house in New Jersey. I gave substance to my memories by placing the image in a frame and recreating his desk at our beach house. Specific items were added to the desk, like a toy replica of the sky blue Austin Healey he restored. To take the concept of place in this piece one step further, a transparency was added behind the windows and video footage from the Manasquan beach camera was added, recreating the view from his desk at the beach house. The background sound is the actual sounds of waves crashing a Manasquan. My classmates were so moved by how I shared so much of myself that I dug deeper into my discomfort. I've always struggled with thinking of myself as an artist because I have no formal art background. This changed last quarter at SCAD. The car accident I was involved in last year left my health in shambles. I was diagnosed with occipital neuralgia, a neurological condition resulting in stabbing pain at the back of my neck. Thankfully, I was able to revisit the surgeon who had operated on me before. And as I just had my 6-week post-op appointment yesterday, I can tell you that I have been pain-free since. But before my surgery, I wanted to create something for my daughter so she could best understand what was happening to me and why I'd look different after my surgery. A personalized, illustrated children's book was designed to help my daughter better understand this and the changes in my appearance. Samantha loved this book. The surgery went extremely well, and Samantha has been very helpful and compassionate since.
My mommy is a superhero with superhero powers. Her kisses, they can make me smile. Her hugs, they last for hours.
For yet another piece in the narrative project, I wrote a poem that describes the different stages in a toxic relationship that was endured in my early 20s. 4 pieces of minimal line art were drawn, each corresponding to a stanza in the poem. Then each image was printed onto printable fabric, and using a sewing machine, the outlined art was sewn over with red thread. Each image was then threaded together. My work to the present shows how the critical values of my beliefs as a designer are interconnected. I must show sympathy for others and how I acknowledge their journey and any difficulties that may arise. For me, sympathy leads directly to empathy because I am constantly concerned with the plight of the other or the marginalized. This opens me up and makes me vulnerable and share more of myself in my work. I show honesty in my designs because I am authentic and my designs present clear and truthful messages with simplified core values. I am also ethical and stay true to my principles. My thesis topic is concerned with how the identities we create through social media are distinctive and quite often different portrayals of ourselves than in real life. When it comes to how youths engage with social media, they are more likely to be swayed by the opinions of influencers because they lack the skills to mediate marketing messages. Despite being technologically proficient, they are not visually proficient. I am looking to research how redefining and reframing the design of social media platforms can create communication that is richer, more accurate, and more truthful. Mine is a story of triumphs over tragedies, a story of someone who has leaned into her discomfort and benefited from it. So what is on the horizon for me during my last year at SCAD? I plan to continue connecting myself to my work, especially as I move further into my thesis topic. I will create work that makes me feel safe in the space of discomfort that I am working in. And I will become someone beyond where I was when I started this program so many years ago. These projects accomplished two things. The work is deeply personal and the work is deeply uncomfortable. The recurring theme of my life's many obstacles, depression, abuse, disability, and loss, all have a spark of positivity lit within them. Because as a famous wizard once said, happiness can be found even in the darkest of times, if one only remembers to turn on the light. Thank you.